Hi, in this video I will talk about torque wrenches. I will explain what they are, how they work, how to use them, how to take care of them. I will discuss precision and accuracy, explaining what it is and in terms of torque wrenches. And finally, I will discuss whether you need them really or not, both for professional use and for home mechanic use. So let us begin now. First thing, what are the torque wrenches? Torque wrenches are high precision tools or instruments, they can be even considered, that let you know when you have reached desired torque, tightening torque. So that's what you need to have in mind, and we will show and explain everything during the video, but just keep in mind that torque wrenches are high precision tools or instruments that let you know in one way or another, we'll show that also, when you have reached a certain torque that you have desired, torque for tightening bolts. Now I have already made videos, I have already made a video explaining what torque is, and if I don't forget when I'm editing, I'll make it pop up in your top right corner, so you can look at that for details. And also I've made a video explaining the nut and bolt joints and why tightening torque is important and how that helps us achieve our goal, which is to have a certain amount of preload. So to not make this video last for hours, I will also make that video now pop up in your top right hand corner so you can look at it. And now let us talk about torque wrenches. How they work? They basically work by either letting you know that you have achieved a certain amount of torque that you have set on them, if they are with a range of torque so that you can set them to a certain torque, or some come with just one torque, preset to only one torque, and in either case they let you know when you have reached that torque. They let you know either by starting to slip or making some sort of a misalignment that's very noticeable, we'll show that also, with a less or more audible click, or they can simply, if they are digital, they can make a sound or flash a light or just stop working for some hydraulic or electronic ones, or they can just show torque on a scale for beam type torque wrenches. Okay, so now to explain how they are used, I will first explain the beam type torque wrenches that I do not have here. Okay, so you will have to imagine. I will try to post a picture somewhere in the video, so probably somewhere here, make some room for that. But they look like some sort of a, usually made of steel, beam that has a head for mounting different kinds of adapters so that you can apply torque. And they have another parallel beam that is directly mounted to this head, their head. And so as you are applying torque, this beam that you are using with the handle is bending a bit, but while the other one that stays free here with an arrow stays in place, and there is a sort of a scale placed on the main beam, so as it deflects, the scale moves and you can see the arrow pointing and showing you the torque that you are applying. So it works linearly, it's analog, like an analog watch, but it shows you the torque. And the good thing about these tools is that they can easily be calibrated. We'll discuss that later in more details, but they're easily calibrated by just aligning the arrow with the zero on the scale when there is no torque aligned. So you can use it by hand and straighten it if it gets a bit out of true. And that is the main advantage of those tools. While their main disadvantage is that they don't have any sort of ratcheting mechanism, usually, and also that you need to keep an eye on that scale and watch the torque as it increases. That is the upside, you can see the torque piling up, and also the downside, you need to keep an eye on that. Okay, so now to explain how they work, there are other types of torque wrenches. For example, this is an electronic screwdriver, and it stops at about 5 Newton meters of torque. It will simply no longer work. I will try to demonstrate it. we'll get later to how they are used, but here let's try to demonstrate it. And that's it. I've reached the torque and it will no longer work. So it's as simple as that. Some other tools, like this one from Park Tools, I will put Amazon affiliate link in video's description for all the tools that I show. This is a very good tool. I'll make maybe an extra video about it. And what it does, it has a scale here that lets you set a certain torque from 4 to 4.5, 5, 5.5 and up to 6 Newton meters. Here it's now set to 6 Newton meters, and that is the main downside, that this wheel is not easily manipulated by hand. Sometimes you have to use a 5mm hex key, but you set it to a certain amount of torque. Let's set it to 5.5 Newton meters, and you insert a bit that you wish to use, and as you start tightening, the screw will turn, and as you reach the desired torque, it will start slipping. It's no longer turning. So that's how that tool works. Let's loosen this a bit. Okay. Now there are other kinds of torque wrenches, and what I talked about, they are high precision tools, so they're usually put in a protective case like this one, and also we also have this one that came in this sort of extra protective case, and it has its own bag to keep it safe, and here it is. And I will now set it to 5 Newton meters. There's a scale. Okay, it's now set to, let me see, I think this is good. It's now set to 5 Newton meters. And when you're using these types of tools, they usually have a handle somewhere here. It's ingrained like this, and if you don't hold it at the handle, you might affect the reading. For this one, that's not so much of a problem, but some models look differently, and so you should always try to make the grip at the place where the handle is, otherwise you might affect the torque reading. And here the torque is set within this body, and this whole head will tilt when I've reached the set torque. So let's see how it works. This one comes with a ratchet mechanism, so I can apply torque. I should hold it here, and I'm creeping up to, there you see it. It does this. You can see it tilt, you can hear it, and you can feel it. On lower torques the click is less audible, but that is basically how it works. Let's check the other bolt. Okay, it's clicked. So there's not much to it, and it does the job. So that is basically how you use them. Another important fact to know is that when you are tightening, if you want to make 5 Newton meters of torque, and you start tightening and stop at just below that point, so let's say 4.5 or 4.8 Newton meters, if you don't continue pushing, then just stop, the bolt will get stuck because the surface of nuts, bolts and their threads are not perfectly smooth, and they can sort of dig into each other, and so there is required some extra torque to get it just started. So if you do it too slowly, you might get the final tension too low. You will under torque it effectively. If you do it too quickly, you are likely to over tighten it. So you should make a smooth, gradual move, a bit, sort of the speed like this. There's no need to go any faster, but there's no need to go much slower. And when you feel it coming to, you can feel by hand when you use a tool and know where you are reaching roughly the set torque, then you should make sure that you have enough room to make that in one go until the tool clicks or until you reach the desired torque if you're using some other method of a tool. But that's important thing to have in mind if you want to be precise, so to avoid user error. So that's one thing. How to take care of this. Now, before we talk about accuracy and precision, let's talk about how to take care of this. They are very sensitive. You should not drop them. Be careful. Don't leave them in the hot sun in the summer. Don't leave them in freezing cold winter in wet, moist conditions. They are sensitive, high precision tools. Also, do not try to use them as hammer or anything else apart from what they are made for, to tighten the bolts. Another important thing is that they should not be used to unscrew any stuck bolts or as a general ratchets. No, do most of the work with the tools you otherwise use and make sure to use this as the final instrument for achieving the desired torque. That is another important thing to know. And finally, before you store them, depending on user manuals, some of those tools require to be set to their lowest torque on their gauge. For example, this tool by user manual should be placed in storage with the torque set to its lowest setting, so 2 Newton meters. That is one example. Some require that you leave them at the torque at the 10% of its minimal, but not at the minimal value. Some, like this one, instruct that you put them at 0. So this one is left placed at 0 torque. And so make sure to follow the instructions. Generally, a rule of thumb is to set it to the lowest torque that it can measure or just a bit over it. So in that case, this one would be set to 2 or 2.5 Newton meters. But always follow the instruction manual if you can get a hold of it, if it is at all available. If you don't have any other info, then set it to the minimal torque or just a few percent over that in order to not damage it, because they have some springs inside, and if you unload the spring too much, it might pop out of place. And likewise, on the other hand, if you leave them at a set torque higher, the spring will compress over time a bit, and there is a thing called creep, I think that's the proper English technical term, that will affect how spring behaves and takes load, and that will make your tools be less accurate. So that is a way to destroy a tool. Just leave it at a halfway or full torque that it can manage and leave it for a week. So that's what makes problems. In addition to that, these tools generally require to be checked and recalibrated if needed after about 1 year or about 1,000 or a few thousands of uses. So that is another complication, and why beam torque wrenches are a good idea, because they can easily be calibrated by hands. The advantage of this is they have ratcheting mechanism. The advantage of this one is that it's easy to handle, and it has some other pros that I will discuss a bit later. Now first I want to talk about precision and accuracy. Okay, so when we talk about precision and accuracy, they are two connected but different things. Precision is how close you are to your target. So if this torque wrench is set to 5 Newton meters, okay, English is not my native. I'm not sure if I use the proper term. Accuracy. Accuracy is how close you are to your target. Okay, so if I set this tool to 5 Newton meters, and when I'm working, it really does click at the torque of exactly 5 Newton meters, that means it's very accurate. If it clicks at 4 or 4.5 Newton meters, then it's not very accurate. Or if it clicks at 5.5 or 6 Newton meters, that means it's not very accurate. And what is precision? Let's say this tool, when I set it to 5 Newton meters, always clicks exactly at 4.5 Newton meters. Every time exactly that. Not 4.4, not 4.9. It doesn't make different places, always exactly 4.5 Newton meters. That means that this tool is very, very precise, but it is not very accurate. So those are two different things. On the other hand, if this tool, when I set it to 5 Newton meters, shows sometimes 5.1, sometimes 4.9, sometimes 5, depending on which attempt I make, that means that this tool is less precise than the tool that always goes to 4.5 exactly. So it's less precise, but it is more accurate. So that is how accuracy and precision are related. And when it comes to these tools, generally, and this is again a very general rule, there are maybe some exceptions, but generally you look at their scale. For example, this one has a scale from 16 or 15. Here I have a scale showing to 15 to 2 Newton meters. No, it has a 16, 1 over 15. So 16 to 2 Newton meters. So its top scale is 60 Newton meters. Most of these torque wrenches are accurate at over 20% of their highest setting. Yes, over 20% of their highest setting. So 20% of 16 is 3 point something Newton meters. So in this case, even though this tool can be set to 2 Newton meters, I would not expect it to be very accurate at 2 Newton meters torques. But anything over 3.5 Newton meters, so more than 20% of its total scale, which is 3.2. 20% is 3.2 in this case, if I'm calculating correctly. For that range, it will be quite accurate and precise depending on the tool's quality and how well you maintain it. If it comes out of calibration, if it needs recalibration, it usually starts losing accuracy but not precision. So precision is mostly affected by the tool's design and quality, and if you're using it properly, unless it's damaged or something. But accuracy suffers, and when you calibrate it, you are practically just making the scale align with what the torque tool works with. So that is another thing to note. If you have a torque wrench that has a range from 100 to say 10 Newton meters, it will be quite precise and accurate on the range from 20 Newton meters, so 20% of the highest torque value, regardless of what the scale is made. The making of scale just means that you are able to have that setting and have that reading, but it might not be perfectly precise. There are some exceptions. For example, this tool, I'll make a separate video, is relatively precise over its most of its range, but it works for about 6% precision and accuracy up to 8 Newton meters, and only over that it has I think 3% or 4% accuracy and precision. So that is how it differs, and the manufacturers claim that it is very precise. Even at 2 Newton meters it should still be accurate and precise for up to plus minus 6%, so it's not too bad. Another thing when it comes to, okay, let's talk a bit more about accuracy and precision. When it comes to the total range of torques, those torque wrenches that have a huge range from very low to very high torques are generally more easily coming out of calibration compared to tools that have only one set torque or just a narrow range of torques. At least this is my opinion based on my experience. I'm not a mechanical engineer and I'm not 100% sure this goes for any tool, but so far from my experience, I will take this tool as an example. This tool has a range of 4 to 6 Newton meters, and it is quite accurate and precise along entire range, and it's worked for years, and it still works very well without needing any recalibration. And On the other hand, I've had some torque wrenches that would come out of calibration relatively quickly, that had a greater range, like from 4 to 24 Newton meters or similar or greater. So those are also some other things to consider. Generally, the more expensive ones are more precise and better designed, but it's not always the case for every tool. So, and now that I've covered this, just one more thing. When it comes to bicycles, some torque wrenches allow you to measure the torque in both directions, because we know that there are some left-handed threads on bottom brackets, pedals, and so on. This is one of those tools, so I can just turn this dial. Now it works for unscrewing for the left-handed threads, and I can turn it back, and now it works for screwing in for the right-handed threads. However, even such tools are not perfectly precise for the reverse direction. For example, this tool is not more precise than 6% when you reverse the direction. It's good enough for bicycles for most uses, but it's not perfectly precise, and that is generally the case with most torque wrenches. And now, finally, do you really need a torque wrench? For carbon fiber parts, everything I say in this video is my opinion based on my experience. So if I say something is so or so, take it just as my opinion. For carbon fiber parts, I think that you do. Those things are super expensive, super sensitive, and if they crack from too much preload, they easily crack. They're usually hollow, and so if you apply too much preload, like carbon fiber handlebars and similar, you might not notice it right away, but when you start riding, they might fail catastrophically and suddenly, so be extra careful. And for those, I always use torque wrenches and make sure to not over tighten them and to not make them too loose. Both can create problems. And I'm not feeling very confident about using any other method. For most steel and aluminum parts, in my opinion, if you have I have a feeling, I've worked for years without using or owning a torque wrench, and I've never had problems because I've managed to figure these things out and get some feel for it from my early youth and childhood. So, even today, I don't use any torque wrenches for any higher torques, like bottom brackets, cassettes, and everything. I never torque those with torque wrenches. I never bother, and I've never had any problem from either stripping threads or from things getting loosened. So I'll try to now get these two bolts. I've already applied some mounting paste. I have a video I've mentioned about mounting pastes. I make it pop up and explaining why I think it's a good idea. So I won't bother you with that, but these threads are smooth and now lubricated, and I'll try to now apply and get about 5 Newton meters of torque on this bolt. I think I've achieved it now. Let's give it a test. I will set this tool to 5 Newton meters. Okay, so it's now at 5 Newton meters. And let's see if I've managed to hit it. Let's see if I get this turning any further. It's not turning any further. And now let's check if I've overdone it. Set this to 5.5 Newton meters. Bear in mind that this is now stopped, and what I talked about at the beginning of the video, it would take some extra torque to get it moving again. So if it is at 5.2 or 5.3 Newton meters, it will not move with this set to 5.5. But if it is at about 5, it should start moving and then click only when I reach the torque. So let's give it a try. No, it's not moving. Let's see what happens if I set it to 6 Newton meters. It's moving and now it clicks. Okay, so it's obvious that I did overdo it to at least 5.5 Newton meters, as much as I can guess or figure out. Fortunately, these connections are not as sensitive to a bit over tightening or a bit under tightening them, and you usually don't have any problems with that. and using this has worked for me for over a decade. I've never had any bolts stripped, anything cracked or anything similar. But for carbon fiber, because of what I've just demonstrated, it's not, for me it's not safe enough, and I prefer using high precision tools. So for the principle for me when I do this by hand is to always use the same tool depending on the job. But for this I use, when I want to fill it by hand, I always use a tool like this. So not something like this, not something like this, or those triangular, let's show it, or something like this one. That's not precise enough for me. I always rely on this and hold it about halfway through, and then I can feel when I've reached the desired torque. So this would be it for this bolt, and this would be it for that one. So let's double check if I got this one right. Let's set the tool to 5.5 Newton meters. Let's give it a go. This was the one, and I think I got it right, so it moved a bit. So not too bad, but not as precise as the torque wrench, but I don't think you really need it as a home mechanic. Just practice on something that's not expensive, get a feel for it. Again, this is my opinion. I'm not telling you that you should not use, and if you damage your bicycle, it's not my fault. But I don't think you really need any expensive tools. But what about professional mechanics? If you're working on some other people's bicycles, there you have certain amounts of additional problems. One is that if you make some sort of a mistake, it can cost you and your company a lot because you lose reputation. And one dissatisfied customer is more painful than 1,000 satisfied customers. So mechanics are like goalkeepers. I like to say, because we are all crazy, joking, because you can do good things a million times and you make one mistake and it costs a lot and everyone is mad at you. So for professional mechanics, that is one problem. And another problem is liability. In case anyone gets injured or hurt, if some part fails, I don't think that you should lie. So if anyone asks you, did you tighten this to the proper torque, did you do a good job? And if you haven't used a torque wrench, you would not be able to tell the truth and say, yes, I did. The best you could do is say, I used only hand feel, but I'm very experienced and very good. And that, I don't think it goes very well when things come to lawsuits or anyone gets hurt. It's very tricky. So for that use, you need to have, unfortunately, the expensive tools, especially with the way that bicycle parts are built today. So quality control, any sort of over-engineering that makes the tools more durable, not tools, tools as well, but parts more durable or more strong, that's all hit and miss. So there are many awfully designed parts, especially carbon fiber, awfully manufactured, no quality control, that can fail, and try to protect yourself by doing it all by the book, so that if anyone asks, you can, without lying, say, I did everything as properly, it's not my fault. So this is probably a lot longer video than I would have liked, but I wanted to explain everything and demonstrate as best as I could. So I hope you find this video useful. I hope it helps you, and whenever you see me using any of these tools in the video, so now you have some idea what it is about and how it is used. I will just mention another thing to make this video last more than 1 hour and be more boring than the dripping faucet. We're going for that record. Okay, so when you have assemblies like this with several bolts, regardless of what it is, here we have only two. It can be the headset of your engine or whatever, gasket, whatever it's called. You should do it gradually. So you start by eliminating any looseness by going all around, and then tighten the bolts just a little bit. If there are 4, you should do it in cross like this. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you do it in a bit gradually, and here you can feel it when you're close to reaching the desired torque. And so then when you've got them all to, say, if I want to 5 Newton meters, I got these all to about 4.5. And only now do I go for the final torque down. And I will use this. And then I double check, because when I tighten one, the other one might lose some tension, some preload, so double checking, making it one more go. If there's 4, I always do 1, 2, 3, 4, always crossing to the other side. So double check that it's all good, and gradually tighten them to the desired torque, but don't do too slow. So for that final torquing down, make sure that you have some movement left. So let's do it again. If I wanted this tight with the torque key, I would get them first, remove any slackness, then get them to some amount of torque that's more or less close to what I want to achieve. And now for the final torquing down, let's see, this is set to 5.5 Newton meters. That's too much. Let's set it to 5. And now I will try to do them both in one go, so without stopping. 1 and then the other. Okay, and now I'll double check just in case. Okay, I think this is good enough. So this is probably the longest video about torque wrenches, and I certainly hope I haven't missed anything. If you have any corrections especially, or questions or additions, use the comment section below. Make sure to like, share and subscribe. I want to beat that dripping faucet video in the number of views. And thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in some other video. Cheers. Okay, for this tool, the principle is very similar to this one, only here you have a scale like this, and as you turn it around, you go to 2 Newton meters. It's still not there. Okay, here now it's at 2 Newton meters. Now it's 2.05, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and I've reached the next small line, so it's 2.5, and I can get further to 2.7. That's 2.5 plus 0.2, and further to 2.8, 9, and 3 Newton meters, and so on. So those are some typical scales. These numbers below are in foot-pounds, and this tool has the scale in foot-pounds as well, or foot-inches, sorry. This is pound-inches, inch-pounds. So this is made to so that people who use imperial metrics, imperial system can easily figure it out and use it. So for me this is unintuitive, but for some people Newton meters are unintuitive, so it's cool thing. So these lower numbers and these on this side are in pound inches or inch pounds, so that's a catch. And this other tool, just to explain that, this other tool is configured. It has small notches for 2, 3, 4, 5 Newton meters. Let's just a second. 2, 3, 4, 5 Newton meters. And on the opposite side is 2.5 to 3.5 and so on. So that's how you read this scale. Sometimes the notches for the extra precision are on this part that turns, like here, and sometimes they are on the scale itself. So it depends, there are different designs. One more thing that I forgot to mention about calibration is that these tools, there are many DIY ways to calibrate, and that requires a separate video. This one is outrageously long, but the base principle is that it's explained in my video about torque. So one foot of distance, 1 feet, and 1 pound is 1 foot-pound, and also 1 meter of distance, and 1 kilogram is 1 Newton meter. So if you have a shorter stick, then you recalculate based on those to get a certain amount of torque, and you have calibration instructions. In this case, it says that this tool should be calibrated at 60% of maximum capacity, 5 times measurements and different measurements at different ranges. So you need some weights depending on the length of this, and to measure them you shouldn't hang those weights apart from the handle, and it's usually calibrated by in this section. That's usually where it's done, but generally you want to return this to the manufacturer or to a professional shop that calibrates this, and because if you want it to be at least precise and accurate, I'm not very skillful, nor would I trust myself to manually calibrate these tools, unfortunately. I hope that some people are. I'd like to learn to do that with DIY tools, but I'm not able to do that yet at the moment of making this video. And what I also wanted to note, yes, when you send this to a shop, you should get some sort of a certificate to how accurately they have calibrated the tools. Not all the shops do a good quality job, and it's not cheap, so take care of your tools, store them in a safe place, use them properly, and always make sure to wind them down to 0 or however it is recommended by the manufacturer before you leave them for storage, so that they don't go out of a calibration sooner than it's really necessary. So now I think I've finally mentioned everything I wanted. So again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in some other video. Cheers.